Good evening. Om Shanti and welcome. So, I don't know about you, but that meditation just brought me into a place of quiet stillness in a way. And it was less than 5 minutes, but I'm sure you felt the impact of it. And so today's topic that we're going to be exploring is the art of mastering my mind. And I was just thinking of this word art. Art is usually associated with creativity, right? Not necessarily drawing or painting, but any form of creative expression can be taken as art. And one of the things you hear specifically from artists, perhaps, is that they have to get into a certain space. That's when the most amazing creations emerge. Sometimes they speak of like a block, artists have a block, or writer's block. Even writers are also creative, expressive forms of expression. And so one of the things that's essential is then learning to be quiet. That's when I can tap into something very beautiful and powerful, and something that can generate newness. So today we're going to look at what are some of the tools and techniques that I can adopt that can then help me to be supported through this amazing faculty that we have, which we call our mind. I'm sure you all agree that the mind influences every single aspect of your life. Yeah, just think about it. Sometimes even unconsciously, or subconsciously, there's thoughts that are happening. You reach out to get a glass of water. You don't think I'm going to get a glass of water, but your hand reaches out because behind it, there might be the thought. So quiet, you're not even aware of it, perhaps. I'm thirsty. And so the action then follows whatever quiet thought happens. So sometimes it's conscious. We create thoughts very consciously. Other times we act and you wonder, where did that come from sometimes? But there is something behind it. And so we look at both the conscious thoughts, but then also underlining that creates sort of undercurrent sometimes, which influences us without us knowing. So, just thinking on a very, very simple level, let's say you got up in the morning and you had the thought, first thing you wake up in the morning, you had the thought, today is going to be a stressful day. What's going to happen from that moment onwards? You're going to feel stressed, isn't it? And then you find, well, maybe just think for your own self. I'm sure you've had these days when you get up with not a fantastic thought, how your mind latches onto that and it just finds all the things to make you stressful, more than what might be the trigger or the reason for that stress. But that first thought in the morning is absolutely essential because that sets the tone for my entire day. So let's say same scenario, but this time I wake up and I think today's going to be such a calm, powerful, peaceful day. How do I enter my day then? How do I enter the world with this persona of it's going to be good, it's going to be calm? And so I start off on a relaxed note. Okay, maybe the taxi driver when I'm getting to work might change that for me in a moment or two, but at least I started not rushing, tense, fearful, anxious. Because when my energies are fast paced like this, there is a greater tendency to make mistakes. When you're tired as well, there's a greatest tendency to make mistakes.
And behind this, that was who that tradition.
Okay, a little little interlude. That's the thing with Zoom. But anyway, So this idea of how I start my day is important. So one of the things that I think we don't give enough value to, and perhaps because we don't fully understand or recognize, is the power of the mind, but more than that, the power of my thoughts. And we do talk about it. We speak about the mind is a powerful tool. You know, everything is created in the mind. And these just become words, but we don't consciously use it, I feel, as a form of power, as something that I can use to help me navigate my day-to-day life. Because like we said in the beginning, everything, every aspect of my life is influenced by my thinking. And so when I begin to see my life as not just separate compartments, but holistically, and I begin to trace back what's the root of it, then that's the first step in starting to create a sense of more balance within my life, within my routine, within every aspect of how I engage in the world. So sometimes we tend to compartmentalize this with that or isolate things. But when we begin to see everything as integrated, we look at things holistically and then recognize how this thing impacts this thing. It's not in isolation. So something might be happening here, but the cause is not here, it's here. So sometimes we spend a lot of time and energy, money even maybe, trying to fix this, but the problem lies somewhere else. And so it's about seeing how everything impacts everything else, and then having the wisdom of knowing, so where do I need to focus on? What is it that I need to focus on? So sometimes, you know, for example, we're not feeling great. Ever have a moment when you're not feeling great? Sometimes it happens, not often, sometimes. But then you try to shake that feeling, you know, try to get rid of that feeling. Does it work? Sometimes it might work. Or you try to convince yourself or tell yourself, I must feel better, with that kind of attitude, even in that kind of feeling. And in a way, it's like I'm hoping I'm going to feel better. It's not with that sense of mastery. It's not with that sense of, you know, I have the capacity within myself to shift the dynamics of how I'm feeling. And sometimes the reason why we don't engage with this kind of awareness is because we believe outside things are responsible for our inner world. So that person said something, that's why I'm not feeling great. So the problem is with them. If they apologize, then I'll be okay. No? And so we keep feeling bad, and then we don't just stop there. We spread that. Everyone else we meet, we tell them about it. We badmouth this person. And so what we're doing in those moments, we're just entrenching ourselves and reinforcing that feeling and adding fuel to the fire without knowing we're doing it, because we feel, how can they do that? Which is true, they shouldn't do that. But by perpetuating this kind of thinking and behavior, what am I doing to myself in that moment? You know? And so it's almost like recognizing power lies in my hands. And when I don't hold my own power, it means I've given it to someone else, which means they're going to have control over my life. If someone has control or influence over what I'm thinking, understand they have control and influence over my life. And I'm sure everyone here wouldn't want anyone to have control over their life. You know, when someone tells you something, then you might say, don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me how I need to be. With that arrogance sometimes, I think more than anything, self-respect as well sometimes comes into the fold. So understanding that I hold the power in my hands, and it's not power over something or someone. It's power over my own thoughts. power or wisdom over how I engage and what is it that I choose to engage with. So it's something that I do very consciously. It's not going to happen just like that. So recognizing, as I said, the mind as a tool that impacts and affects and influences every aspect of my life, from the smallest to the biggest things that happen. It's the same mechanism at play. Just how much energy and focus I give it will determine whether it's small or whether it's big. And we see this happening. There'll be two people faced with the exact same situation. No difference. Both of the outcome of theirs or how they respond will be totally different, isn't it? Nothing changed, the same situation. And so what that shows is the individual decides and determines. And we know all of these things. But like I said, we don't exercise it because we forget that, hey, I'm the master. I'm the one that holds all the cards. And I can determine which card I want to play when and which cards I don't want to play as well. And it's these things that can support and help me on some level. So one of the things, a few of the things that can, or you begin to see happening as you start gaining mastery over your mind, is you'll find with time, not overnight, obviously, but gradually with time, that your thoughts begin to slow down. So most of the time we think fast and a lot. And how do you know someone's thinking a lot or fast? They speak a lot. And they, oops, sorry, reality check here. But it's like there's so much happening and no pauses in between. So it just goes on and on and on sometimes. If you're on the receiving end, it can be a little bit tiresome to just listen to that. So one of the things that will happen as I begin to master my mind and my thoughts is that my thoughts begin to slow down. And when my thoughts slow down, my mind becomes quieter. And when there's quiet in the mind, I can think clearly. We've heard this, no? Thinking clearly. So that's the one thing that happened. The other thing that might happen or will happen if I'm doing it right is that I will stop reacting as much. Remember, we spoke of how thoughts and feelings and actions are all connected. And so when my mind starts slowing down, when I gain mastery over my mind and my thoughts, then because there's space in my mind, there's an opportunity to pause before I impulsively react, because reactions usually are impulsive. I don't think they're measured and informed. Responses are measured and informed, but reactions are usually fast, quick, and then later bring regret. I shouldn't have. Just the word impulsive indicates that it's not conscious or informed. So that's the other thing that happens. And then the third one I was thinking of is it helps me to develop focus and concentration. And these are essential for us to do things accurately, and secondly, to save time. How often have you, maybe you've got a document to do, a report to write, or some deadline you have to finish? Can you be so focused that you give yourself so much time and you knock it out within that time? Or do you sit down and then you start and then your mind goes somewhere else and then you get distracted by something else and then you find you need to get a cup of tea just to move away because you don't like what you're doing? Sounds familiar? Procrastination, we call it sometimes. So all of this can be reduced greatly if I learn how to activate this power of my mind. And so in doing so, I will be more effective. I will save time, which means less stress, less pressure, less thoughts, fearful thoughts, worrying thoughts, tension thoughts. And I will do whatever it is that I need to without feeling stretched or burdened or overworked, because these are also repercussions or consequences of what I'm holding in my mind. Because when I can't get something done, the deadline is the deadline, right? And it draws closer. What happens the closer I get to it? More stressed, which means I'm going to make more mistakes. And then I get upset and I beat myself up. So again, just seeing how everything has a knock-on effect on everything else. So it requires, let me be intentional about what I want to do, how I want to do it. What's the method that I'm going to adopt? What's the structure with which I'm working? Because I have to create something that can give my mind and my thoughts almost parameters to work within. Because one of the things that's happened over time, and it continues to happen, we have a habit, it's a habit of just thinking about everything. Even if it's not my business, I will think about it. And so quickly it happens, you see something, immediately, thoughts. You hear something, not your business, not your story, and immediately you're distracted and your attention goes elsewhere. So we like plugging into so many different things constantly, and then we feel exhausted, and then we wonder, why have I not been as productive as I would have liked? And then again, that creates that spiral of moving downwards, feeling overworked, overwhelmed, all these wonderful things that we're so familiar with. So it's about changing that pattern, changing that mindset. And so it does require that I do things differently. That meditation commentary we heard in the beginning was about creating newness through a clean mind. And so it's like I have to remove all the old stuff. And the old stuff is just habitual ways of thinking. And as a result, habitual ways of acting or doing things or reacting, if we're talking about feelings and relationships and emotions. And so, what is it that I want to remove? I have to first be aware of what's in there. Only then can I remove it. And then the second step is absolutely essential as well. What do I want to create and hold instead of that which I'm removing? The two work together, and I need to have both in place. Otherwise, I'll automatically keep gravitating to my default setting of how I've always done something. And so recognizing, how do my thoughts influence me? What are some predominant thought patterns that I adopt in my life that are not serving me or sustaining me? And what are the thoughts that do support me? It's quite broad, these three kind of checking in. But as I begin to look and I see certain, maybe moments in my life, certain experiences, certain scenes, now notice there's a certain trend or pattern. When this one says something, then it triggers something. When that one doesn't do something, then it triggers something in me. When I see this, my blood just boils, kind of a thing, things like that. And it's sometimes not even things close to us, but just the news sometimes. I'm not saying you mustn't listen to the news or watch, but again, understand, how does it influence and affect me? Is it supporting me or is it taking me away from what it is that I want to create. And again, the reminder, it's in my hands to choose and decide. And that only happens when I take full responsibility, knowing I'm creating the quality of life that I'm having and leading at this moment. And if I want to change that, then I can easily do that as well. Okay, easily in terms of I can change my thought pattern. The process takes a while. It doesn't happen overnight. So just check in this moment, just a quick check-in for yourself. What's the predominant quality of thoughts that you have? Maybe in this moment, never mind for the day or anything, just check in. What's your thoughts? Is it, oh, this sounds great. She's talking rubbish. This is ridiculous. It's so airy-fairy. This is something I can work with. Now I'm in a good space. Just do a quick check-in. I remember Mike George. Some of you might remember he came here many years ago and he did a talk somewhere. And I can't remember what the topic was, but at some point, and it was about thoughts and what we do with thoughts and how we react when we see something. And he said, so some of you will be here and thinking, like the example that I gave about myself, what are the thoughts you're thinking about what I'm saying? And then he says, what are you doing with Mike in your head? So Mike is sitting here, he said, what are you doing with him? You interpreting, you adding your own stuff, you creating judgment, you creating scenarios. So who's doing all that? So he said, as many people as there are here, that many different versions of Mike there will be. Yeah, makes sense? It is like that, isn't it? And then we hold on to that and make it our reality. We believe it and we make it our reality. And then we use everything, that as a benchmark to everything. So I've created this image of Mike. I'm using Mike as an example. I don't think he'll mind. Well, he's not here, so he wouldn't know, would he? But no. So here's Mike. I've created a certain image and perception of him. And as long as he stays within that parameters that I've created, that's not who he is, not at all what he's like, but I've created. As long as he stays within those parameters, then I'm okay. Let him just do something different outside of the parameters that I've created and contained him in. Something triggers. So think of your own relationships, because a lot of the challenges we have, I think, in life, and I could be mistaken here, has to do in our relationships, right? You know, people don't do what I'd like them to. They don't behave well. They don't listen. They don't understand me. Mostly negative things, unfortunately. But think about, what do you create in your mind, or what have you created in your mind about these individuals that is perpetuating a certain belief or a certain pattern of reaction rather than responding? And so can I come to a place, and now this is like higher grade stuff, can I come to a place where I'm so comfortable with myself and my inner world that I can accept other people as they are, what they are? Can I see them for who they are? And not just who they are, but can I see the good in them? And that's why I said it's higher grade, because I have to stretch my capacity to embrace something that I might not be comfortable with initially. So example, someone's pressing your buttons. Is it easy to see them in a good light? No, they like irritate the daylights out of you. But we don't know anyone like that, right? We don't know anyone like that. Let's just hypothetically speaking, someone like works on the last nerve of yours. Now Nita comes and says, I must see the best in them. You think it's easy? No, I don't think so. And that's why I said we have to stretch ourselves. a little bit, means I have to expand my consciousness, my generosity, my power, and accommodate something that doesn't sit well with me. And I don't do it for their sake. Well, it might help us in the long term, but I do it because I want to hold what I want to hold about myself in my mind for myself, so that I'm okay, I'm at rest, I don't feel disturbed, my thoughts are not racing all over the show whenever they come in front of me. Because when I'm engaging in that kind of thoughts and feelings and behaviors, I'm completely powerless. And then that just perpetuates something again. So again, I own when I keep the focus on myself, it changed the dynamics and the energy with which I approach things. If it's about them, then it's always, I don't take responsibility, I wait for someone or something to do whatever so that the dynamics change. And if I'm going to wait, I'm going to wait for a very long time. And in the meantime, I won't say suffering, I battle, I struggle with my emotions, with my thoughts. So just seeing how all of these impacts in a way. So the way I can rise above, I'm going to call it rise above, seeing the weakness or that issue, their habit or their nature in that moment, is I have to see beyond that. So and this is now where spiritual understanding becomes such a powerful and useful tool. So one of the understandings we have at the Brahma Kumaris, and those who are familiar would know this, we talk about the soul as being spiritual energy, and every single one of us holds qualities: peace, purity, power, love, and bliss, a happiness beyond senses. No matter what an individual is like, at the core of their being, like their original state of being, where nothing happened to them, is these qualities. Just as for myself, I hold these at the core of my being. I remember many years ago, again, many years ago, Sister Wadi, Veronica, she was here and she was doing a retreat, and it was about the heart or something like that. And then she said, you know how quickly we come into judgment. Someone's behaving in a certain way, and the thought comes up, why are they acting like that? You know, what are they doing? And she said, instead of asking that, which is quite a judgmental question, which then brings up all sorts of not good thinking and feelings and energy, she says, why don't you stop and ask, what happened to you that you're behaving in that way? So it just changes the energy to, I feel compassion, to understanding, to want to know the deeper meaning and reason. And so it just disarms that initial reaction that I might have, because we know hurt people hurt others. You know, sometimes people react in a way because they're having some trauma, some challenge, some difficulty. So can I extend myself to be a bit more understanding? Can I extend myself to maybe just listen behind the words? Because if I listen carefully, I'll pick up that there's something not right. And we've experienced this. You know, you meet someone and you ask them, how are you feeling? And they'll say, no, I'm fine. And you know, they're not fine. You've had that? I'm sure you have. We have, especially if there's someone we know well or close to us, you can pick up something. So it's becoming more in tune with subtle energies, not just thoughts, but thoughts create vibrations, but then also feelings, tapping into the not obvious. You know, I said we'll talk about the conscious, but then the subconscious as well. Things that are beneath the surface. And so when my attention goes there, then it becomes about something else, not what they're doing. And then it could change the whole dynamic in terms of, instead of, why are you doing this to me? How can I help you? So in a moment, I can change something almost instantaneously by just bringing in the right thought in that moment. Does that make sense? Possible? I won't say easy. I'll ask if it's possible, but it is possible. Just try it with one person. Just even just for a day, think about as you move through your day, just think about, can I use today to just seek to understand? Not just react. Let me be one that listens so that I can understand. And you'll find your whole world outlook begins to change. Okay, maybe not your whole world outlook, but that day's outlook and the people you engage with could change. Most possibly, it will change for you for that moment. Then the key is, how do I sustain that? How do I keep that going? Not as a once off, but something that I then begin to integrate into every facet of my life. And then that becomes my habit. And then that becomes my default setting. So eventually, subconsciously, that's how I will be without having to consciously think about it. And that's creating the newness. That's the part of the art of mastering my mind. So the result is something new, something beautiful, something powerful that emerges as a result of changing one thought in that moment, because it's coming from an informed place, not reaction, not just impulsive, but rather I'm intentional about my part in that whole scenario. I'm intentional about what is it that I want to do in this moment? What is it that I want to create for myself in this moment? So that's the one thing. The other thing we need to guard ourselves against is the things that influence us that are not good, that we create. Nothing from the external, but the thoughts that I create, even just about myself, can be very harmful. And we have a tendency to think sometimes not so good things about ourselves. Sometimes someone tells me something about me, maybe not so good. And someone else tells me 10 good things about me. Which one will I think about? The one that said something not so good, isn't it? Which, if we just have to step back and think about it logically or with a little bit of objectivity, isn't that silly? One thing overshadows 10 good things. It's like you have a glass of water, pure water. You put one drop of poison, that whole glass of water becomes poisonous. And so we do that to ourselves unknowingly. I've got all these amazing, good, powerful, pure qualities. Others can see it. Sometimes they don't see it, which is fine. Important thing is I need to see it. But someone comes and says one thing, and in that moment, all those qualities are useless for me in that 1 second. And it happens in a second. So think about, how do I sabotage my own self because of what I create in my mind through the thoughts that I'm generating. So you begin to see really the power of the mind to either create something beautiful or to sabotage even something good. And I have to remain almost so consciously aware at every moment. And so it's just about checking in now and again. And so I begin to create the habit of observing what's happening in my mind. We're very used to observing what's happening outside with people. Now eyes are looking out all the time. But now it's like turn the lens inwards and just check in. I like to think of it as a checking in. Hey, what am I thinking now? It doesn't mean something has to happen. Then you decide to check in and try and trace it back. Then it's very hard because you're emotionally entangled in it. Your state of mind is maybe busy, heightened, chaotic, tense, all of those things we mentioned earlier. So then it becomes a bit more difficult to identify what's the thought pattern, that initial thought pattern or that triggered thought. But if I create this habit of regularly checking in, maybe when I'm walking, I don't have anything to do, just stop for a moment. Nothing's happened, no one's around, no reactions, don't have to do anything. Check in. I'm drinking a cup of coffee, or while I'm working, stop for a moment and say, how's it up there or in there? In there, is everything okay? Where's my mind going? And it's a beautiful process. It's about discovery. It's about seeking to understand myself. So just as I would extend myself to understand another for my own sake and helping that other one, can I then extend that same generosity and compassion to myself as a sign of love and respect? With this intention, I just want to know. I want to discover. I want to realize. And as you do so, you'll see the not so good, but you'll also begin to see your strengths. Because it's not all the time when you check in, your mind's going to be a mess. There'll be times when you'll be holding beautiful thoughts. And that reinforces that, hey, there's a lot of good in my mind and within myself as well. And so I then begin to gravitate towards that because it's not coming from outside. It's not because of something. I've created that. It's self-generated. When it's self-generated, it holds more impact for me in that moment. So it is about cultivating different habits of how I use my thoughts, what I choose to engage in, and how intentional am I in whatever it is that I do, from the smallest thing to the biggest thing. In every relationship, can I come in with a new set of eyes, so to speak? So I'm not carrying the old parameters of my last experience with someone, because that does influence me. I had a little altercation with someone 2 weeks back, let's say, and when I see them now, what do I remember? That moment. And I put my guard up, right? My defenses up. Maybe I don't even choose to engage with them. When I see them coming, I turn around and run in the opposite direction. Avoidance, because something's going to be triggered. But imagine if I come with fresh eyes, no baggage of the past. My interaction with them will be very different. And I give them the benefit of the doubt. Of course, I need to understand sometimes people will do the same thing, so I need to guard myself against that. But let me not just be quick to judge also. Can I give people a chance also sometimes? Because I would want that for myself as well. And they say, treat others the way you want to be treated. We know all these wonderful things, but act on it, use it more consciously and draw on it in a powerful way all the time. Like I said, not just when things are going wrong, because that's when we want to do all the inner work and go meditate and do this coaching course and go for that lecture, listen to this podcast is good. I'm not saying don't do that. Don't wait for things to get to a point then you feel you need a crutch. But create it, then you'll never get to that point where you would need that kind of a crutch. And even if you do get to that point, because life happens, you'll have the tools and capacity then to come out of it and overcome it, because you've made your mind strong. You've learned how to work with your thoughts and your feelings. And so you'll move through it much more easily. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but much more easily than you would have if you hadn't had that kind of strong foundation. So take time out, every day if you can, take time out for yourself, and especially first thing in the morning. just be, even if you do nothing else, just make sure in the morning you create good, powerful, positive, elevated thoughts about yourself, other people, and the world in general. Don't start off with headache thoughts. And just experiment with it for a week and see. And so our default setting might be at this point negative thoughts, stressful thoughts when I wake up. Catch yourself and change it immediately. So be very intentional. What helps with the good positive thoughts in the morning is I go to bed with good positive thoughts. So preparation before going to bed will influence the quality of my sleep one level, but it will also influence how I wake up in the morning. So just put, if nothing else, just put these two things in place, and then you can tell me if it works or not. But it means you have to be disciplined and do it every day, not today I'll do it, tomorrow I'm too tired. I really had a bad day. There's no way I can see something good in this. No, not like that. You might have to dig a little deeper, but there's always something that you can draw and gravitate towards that then becomes fuel for you, that supports you. So those were some thoughts that I was having. End of the day, it's about practice, awareness, and being intentional. I think those three things I would say are important to just help navigate through my mind and my thoughts. So I'm going to pause then. I left a bit of space for any questions or comments. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to unmute, or if you prefer, you can put it in the chat. Anyone in the room? Any questions or thoughts? All good? Yes.
What about the relationship between thinking and hopes and feelings? Because sometimes I feel that really feel
And then the
and then
thought.
just kind of comes in, so
Close. Yeah. So Sue's just asking if with thoughts and feelings, which one comes first? Do the thoughts come first or the feelings that come first? I think they work together almost. You can't almost separate it, because one of the things that happens, when we create a thought, there's an association with it. Or when we have an experience, there's an associated thought with it. And so sometimes something is triggered because there's a thought associated with it. Does that make sense? So the two are quite interlinked. So sometimes, even if you think about it, when you were young, your mom cooked lovely curry, right? And it had a specific fragrance, And so it's created a memory, it's created an imprint, it's created an experience. When you see it, it creates thoughts like you remember your mother. My mom used to make that, right? All of these things in one experience or memory. And then, you might be walking somewhere out and you're passing a restaurant and you get this fragrance. What happens? The feeling comes immediately and then the thought comes, So it depends. What's in the subconscious will influence on both levels. So there has to be I need to be aware of the link between the two, and then I need to also be aware of what's triggering what. Sometimes feelings trigger certain thinking. Sometimes my thought will create a certain feeling, and each situation is different. Usually, when there's been deep impressions, so deep experiences of certain things, those usually are triggered on their own, in a way, but every moment might be different, so you just have to check in again. But don't get too caught up in analyzing it. Just understand the impact it's having, and then how do I move out of it? Because if we're going to go into analysis, we're going to get into a rut again, and our mind's going to overthink again, and it will defeat the purpose of what we want to create. Thank you for that. Anyone on Zoom? Okay. It doesn't look like anyone has any questions, so
Uh, Sister,
yes, go ahead.
yeah, can you? Yeah, uh, I must appreciate it. Actually, it was very enlightening session from you, right? Had a lot of good things. So, one thing I wanted to ask is like sometimes, some thoughts keeps on coming in your brain, right? And there is no way that you are getting rid of it. So, what to do in that situation?
Mm, good question. I think it's something many of us experience. So you said, how do I get rid of it? It's not about getting rid of it because that becomes very difficult. It's rather, what do I need to replace that thought with? So if I'm creating a thought, I shouldn't be feeling this way, I shouldn't be doing this, and I tell myself, stop thinking like that, stop it. It's not going to work. I need to say, let me create thoughts of peace. Let me create positive thoughts. So I'm not fighting to stop thinking in a certain way, but I'm choosing consciously what is it that I do want to think about. And then automatically that thought pattern finishes off. And that's why I said earlier, I have to be very intentional about what I want to create. When I know that I want to create peaceful, powerful thoughts, as a standard for my life, this is just an example, you must discover what you want to create, then anytime something comes that disturbs me, I don't have to think, what do I need to do now? I know exactly the type of thoughts I need to create. So instead of fighting, trying to stop it, see what is it that I want to replace it with? What is it that I want to focus on and give energy to? Hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, I never experienced so far, but yeah, I will try it that replace the
Mhm.
thoughts, not remove the thoughts, right? I used
That's
to
it.
think like remove it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe
No, no.
hopefully it will work. Okay.
Yes, you tried.
Yeah,
Most
another
of us
question.
try to get rid of it. But yes, another
Another
question.
Yeah, another question is like, you told that whenever any confrontation happen or someone is, yelling at you and he's annoyed with you, that time you say that, how can I help you? You understand his situation, right? Like it's
Mm,
kind of a empathy, right? Having an
mm,
empathy and trying to be compassionate about it, about him or her, right? But what happens sometimes, you don't get, in a moment you also get angry because how do you pose like because the mind is so fast reacting when something happens like this, then we say no, this is chemical of our brain, I can't stop it. I try to do
mm,
that, actually what you told, that I have to be like, maybe I take a deep breath, but before I take a deep breath, my reaction comes out before,
mm.
so how do I control it?
It's creating practices. So learning to quieten the mind. So meditation is a wonderful tool that helps to quieten the mind. In your life, start creating positive thoughts, start focusing on good things, start seeing virtues in everyone. Because in the end, there will be triggers and there'll be moments when I react, but catch myself. But the more you practice when things are okay in your life, when you're not being triggered, just general day-to-day things, then what you're doing is developing capacity. So in a moment when you're challenged, you have like a stock of powers that you can then tap into, that can help you to maybe pause for a moment, because now you've learned how to be quiet. So instead of just reacting, there's a moment where you can pause, think about things. So there's no quick fix, there's no instant methods. It just requires practicing. And I think, again, just being aware of what my triggers are, and then seeing, why am I triggered? What do I want from that person? What's the perception I'm holding? What's the expectation? Sometimes it's always linked to one of these or all of these elements. So it's just being more self-observant and picking up things and then practicing getting out of that kind of mindset and old settings. Thank you. Good question as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. One last chance, anyone? Okay, so If there isn't, I'm wondering if we can just end off with a short meditation, just as a way of closing the session. So I'm going to invite you to just sit comfortably. Take a deep breath in. Gently breathe out and just relax. And so for the past hour or so, I have listened to a lot. I might have internalized some things. And perhaps there's things that I will be processing, but for now, let me just leave all of that aside and just come back to a place of centeredness within myself. I remind myself that I am a powerful being who has choice at every given moment of what I'd like to create as thoughts. So just allow this one thought to sit in your mind, that I am a powerful being who always has a choice as to what I want to create. And then I just focus my thoughts inwards. And just imagine for a moment that my mind is a still lake that holds clarity, that holds depth of wisdom, a deeper sense of knowing. And I completely immerse myself in this lake so that the stillness, the clarity, the wisdom, the deeper knowing becomes a part of me. And feeling the sense of support that these energies provide, I just reflect for a moment. What is it that I'd like to preserve within my mind, within my feelings, within my relationships? What is it that I'd like to hold as the predominant thoughts, feelings, attitudes within my mind, within my being? And so just observe what comes to the forefront of your mind. Don't think too much, don't analyze. Just allow it to emerge from that quiet stillness of your mind. And as it becomes clear, allow this to be consolidated within. And so I can use this as my benchmark, as my anchor, as that which gives me direction and focus. As I begin to move through my days with a deeper sense of purpose and holding a deeper sense of intention. Everything I think, I speak, and I do is to hold, to uphold, and to preserve that which I value. So just allow this to settle into your consciousness. And then gently, when you feel ready, then you can bring your awareness back into this present moment, in the here and the now. So thank you all for joining us. Take care and do try and put one or two of these things into practice and see how it works for you. So Om Shanti, good night.